So we're going to start. The title of this is, don't tell me, how to read between the lines in high-end audio advertising, right?
Yeah, and we thought we might increase it to...
Yeah, we may expand on that. I'm sure Michael will expand on it no matter what I...
How to read between the lines of high-end audio reviews, I think.
We can do that too, because they kind of go hand in hand in ways. But, so I'm Brent Butterworth. I've been doing audio reviews for most of my life since 1990. I've written for Video Magazine, I was editor of Home Theater Magazine, I was editor of Home Entertainment Magazine, I was contributing technical editor of Sound and Vision. I currently write for Soundstage, Wirecutter, Home Theater Review, Jazz Times, et cetera, but perhaps more important in this case, all of my education is not in, I have no education in audio, I have no education in journalism, but I do have education in advertising. And I worked for 2 ad agencies, and I still do advertising work on the side for a wide variety of clients, including some high-end audio guys, some cigar companies, liquor companies, all sorts of things. So I have a lot of experience on in both sides of it, and I'm gonna. So we have Michael Fremer. I'm gonna let everybody else give their own story. We have Michael Fremer, Chris Connaker, and Jeff Merkel. Mike, you wanna?
So I'm senior contributing editor at Audiophile, and I'm the editor of Analog Planet. And I too have a background in advertising. I produced thousands of radio commercials for car stereo stores, and clothing stores and all kinds of other stores. And they were pretty crazy commercials, and I don't think they could run on the radio today, but they ran back then on alternative rock stations. And then I did stuff for a video store too, so I have a background in that as well. And I've been writing about audio since the mid-'80s, but I don't have a journalism degree, but I learned from Harry Pearson, and that was a real learning experience because he took a review I wrote and I couldn't get it published for a year. He kept red penciling it and sending it back until it was meeting his specifications. And that's something that's missing today in a lot of audio journalism. It's not really journalism, it's just guys writing stuff. That's too bad, but there should be some standard, but I don't think we'll ever get one. But anyway, that's who I am.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm Chris Connaker, founder of ComputerAudiophile.com. I was unfortunately born an audiophile, like many people here, and my work experience was enterprise IT. And in 2007, I was looking online to figure out a couple of questions I had was setting up a music server and digitizing my audio or ripping CDs or whatever. And I couldn't find it, so I figured out I would start my own site. And in 2009, I quit working for other people, and it's my full-time gig. So that's my story.
Cool. My name is Jeff Merkel. I'm from the University of Colorado, Denver, and I teach in recording arts and in physics. So I teach the science. I teach the arts in the sciences and the sciences in the arts. And then I've been a mastering engineer for 20 years, and I have been a studio owner in various avenues for a long time. And then I also am a loudspeaker boutique manufacturer. I also do guitar cabs, bass cabs, custom PAs, that kind of stuff too. So, but yeah, I come a lot more from the pro side of things than the audiophile world, but at the high end, it kind of crosses paths in both directions. So yeah, I think, I guess I'm more of I would say, science guy first. And so that's why I think this topic is really fun for me.
Cool, thanks. So I'm going to start with a little spiel. Since I, have experience on the advertising side, I was also marketing director of Dolby Labs for a couple of years. So I've been the guy who buys the ads. I've been the guy who indirectly sells the ads. Since I was editor of a magazine, the editors have to make sure that the money's coming in not as much as the publishers do, but to some extent. So just some real basic sort of ideas. I wanted to talk about why do audio companies advertise in the first place? And I have 4 reasons written down, and I'm wondering I'm going to throw the obvious one out there right now. They want to sell you a product, obviously. They want to sell you their new box, their new speaker, whatever. Does anybody know a few more reasons why an audio manufacturer might want to advertise? And I'm talking about advertising in an enthusiast publication or website, probably, not forums or something. What do you got?
To get better reviews.
Yes. That's actually, that, you know, since I'm on both sides of it, and I have clients now who advertise, and I sometimes make their ads for them when they ask me real nice. But that's one thing that they are concerned about, and a lot of people think that there's a trade-off, like if you advertise in a publication, you'll get reviews. And that does happen sometimes, and I would say more often than not, it doesn't happen. I specifically know sometimes it did, and there were times at Dolby where I basically advertised with people because I knew I would get good coverage, but that was my gig. I think it happens a lot less. I mean, I don't know, you guys are on the media side, how much, I mean, I haven't had, the last time I had any pressure to do like a good review, other than, you know, people calling up and getting a little testy with me after they fact checked the copy, I can't really remember the last time I was pressured.
I've never been pressured to review something or not review something. I've never been pressured to write a certain way, to give anything a good review, ever. I mean, ever. Even when I was at the Absolute Sound for all those years, and at Stereophile, it's never, ever happened. And I've written plenty of negative, not nasty reviews, but negative reviews. And that's the way it goes. I've never been pressured one way or another by anybody.
Yeah, I found most manufacturers don't want you to even write it so it even looks like that. I mean, as soon as you hit publish, thousands of people are reading it and they're going to call you out immediately. So they're like, don't even go near writing something you think we want you to write.
But I will tell you this. Audio manufacturers do want to maintain a good relationship with the publications, one way or another. We have innumerable possibilities of stuff to review. It just goes on and on and on and on. You could have DAC magazine, just DACs only, and never run out of stuff to review. So, you know, I think the manufacturers do it a lot to keep a good relationship going with the magazines. And there are manufacturers, thank God, who actually think it's sort of their responsibility to sort of keep the publications going, because otherwise who would publicize them? So any other reasons? I have a couple more.
Yeah, I do
What do you got?
Differentiate themselves from other products like them?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which goes into selling, and we'll talk some more about that too, and the ways that they differentiate themselves, which are sometimes really useful and sometimes not.
Keeping your name in print.
That's another one I have written down. A lot of it is just pure awareness. I mean, if you look at Stereophile or TAS, you'll see that, you know, close to half the ads are just the product and the company name and the product name, and that's it. And the product, it's sort of like, I was realizing today, it's sort of like a dating profile, where you're, you know, when you go on Match.com.
I haven't done that. Have you done that?
Oh, hell yeah.
I've met my wife that way. 10 years.
Awesome. It didn't work.
I'll lose my wife that way.
It didn't work so good for me. But if you go on those things, you try to, rather than try to, you know, you're basically you're figuring out what of your characteristics might be appealing, and you're not going to highlight any of your negative characteristics. And if you really can't make that much of a pitch, you get the best possible picture you can of yourself, and you put that up there, and you hope that will close the deal. And this is sort of the same thing, and that's why there's a lot of, you know, how do you advertise a Class A/B amplifier? I mean, on some level, they're all kind of the same. You have to create a mystique for it, and you have to, you know, put a pretty picture, etc. So I have one more reason I bet nobody can guess.
How about supporting your customers, so to speak, when the store is actually selling the product?
That is exactly what it was. And you did guess it. Yeah, it's to keep your dealers happy, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that manufacturers do this a lot, and this is a giant chunk of their reason for advertising, is they know their dealers will pick up the publications and go, oh, he's advertising, he's pushing my product, therefore I feel good about selling.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are kind of, there's a lot of perception that advertising is evil, that it's dishonest, but, you know, I've written for ads for, maybe 50 companies or something, and I've never been pressured to do anything that was dishonest. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I mean, we could.
There are things that happen at some places.
Like what happens?
There's a thing where we'll review your product if you advertise, and that I don't like that. We don't. It doesn't happen in Stereophile where anybody says if you advertise, we'll review your product. That I know of. I
But it
wouldn't
does
do
happen.
Oh, it happens.
It's
I
quite
know.
popular.
Yeah, pay to play.
Yeah.
It's
I
pay
know,
to play.
but do you get, I mean, I know of at least one site that works like that. I'm not gonna say who it is. It's not you.
I know. It's quite popular.
And so what do you think about that?
Feels weird. I don't do it. It just doesn't seem right.
Then you're not you're a
Yeah,
publicist.
yeah, it's
Switched
kinda-
over to being a publicist.
Yeah, and I've had manufacturers send emails saying, well, advertising doesn't work, but you have to pay your bills, so we're gonna pay you and then you just write the review. No.
You know, that's what you said is really important. Advertising doesn't work. That's only if the advertiser is naive enough to think that if you advertise, it's to sell products. Because advertising does not sell. You can't run an ad and expect a bump in sales from running an ad. You can only expect a certain amount of goodwill and a certain amount of publicity that might generate people going to a store to hear it and then maybe buying something. But there's no, if you run an ad, there's no guarantee that the next quarter you're gonna sell a lot more product just because you ran an ad.
Well, and I'm curious, how, like, on the when you're doing reviews, the positive versus negative, or I mean, because usually it's rare you're going to go, this product sucks, top to bottom. Usually it's going to be, it has a lot of good points, and you can, even if it has some negatives, you can either omit those, or how much do you omit? Or, like, if there's a negative side to it, do you omit? So I guess what I'm asking is, you've got a high profile, somebody who's advertising, and you're going to review their product, and something stinks in it. Like, okay, well, there's a lot of good parts to it, and we'll push the good parts to it, but maybe we just don't push.
Never think that way.
Really?
I don't know who's
Okay.
advertising any given
Okay.
point. I don't pay attention.
That's
another
cool.
good point, is that people don't, this is starting.
I don't
to
read
get
the
down
ads
on
when I
the
flip my magazine. I just don't have time, so I don't.
But the thing is, the reviewers submit the reviews about, 2 to 3 months in advance of when they run. So the reviewer doesn't have any idea of who's advertising in that magazine. This is a problem. Sometimes the advertiser expects the reviewer to know that they're advertising. And quite often, I've had, when I was an editor, I had manufacturers get mad for not covering their product, even if it was like a roundup of, I don't know, if you did a roundup of DAX, I keep picking on DAX, but I got one here. If you did a roundup of DAX, let's do a really particular category. DSD, well, no, they're all DSD.
Good sounding one.
Quad sounding, or not quad DSD DAX, right? There's not that many of them. If you did a roundup of that and just left out who's a really, really prominent person.
Talk to him.
Or like, I don't know, is Meitner, they have quad?
No, they don't. They don't really.
Somebody's got quad.
I-Fi.
I-Fi, okay, I-Fi.
That's
If
great
you left,
stuff.
if you did it and you left out I-Fi, well, I've done those things as an editor, done roundups of categories like that, left out a major advertiser, and it does make you look kind of stupid, but, because but nobody's perfect.
The worst thing, so when you get something into review and then the manufacturer emails you and says, who do I talk to about advertising? That's really offensive, because what they're saying is, we're gonna advertise, so we wanna have an effect on your review. And I've gotten that.
Happens a lot.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've gotten it.
And I say, don't,
million times.
you can find out, you can find out who the advertising people are at the magazine by opening the cover of the magazine, and it's written there. I don't get involved in it, but that gives me a bad feeling
So-
to start with.
I have a question, Jeff. I mean, you're more from the product side, so, and the engineering side. Do you read ads and get a little PO'd sometimes at a lot of the claims,
Uh-huh.
such as? I mean, you don't have to name.
Well, no,
a
yeah,
specific
yeah. I mean, again,
manufacturer,
and
but
I-
just give me a general.
So, one of the things that, well, you push numbers that, for obvious reasons, that help promote your stance. Whether you've got better THD or better, but then they start throwing things like weighting scales in there, and you can pad your numbers pretty easily in a number of different ways to make your stuff look better. And a lot of times I feel that they're preying on the lack of knowledge on the end user, that they're like, okay, this number's supposed to be up or this number's supposed to be down, and that's all they know. And that's fine. I mean, because most of us don't have, the general public isn't going to spend, going to college to learn how to read these numbers.
Cars are like that, car ads are like that too.
Exactly.
Well, they don't bother with how it
And-
runs anymore, it's all about what's inside your
And it makes total sense
phone
that
with it.
as a company, you're not going to put the bad numbers in your ad. Then nobody wants to do that, right? But at the same time, I feel there's a lot of times, or actually I sat in on a conference a few years ago with a lot of manufacturers, and there was, and this is in the loudspeaker world, and they were talking about what numbers do you put on your spec sheets, and they're like, we basically put nothing because it's too confusing for people to understand. So and that it's the actual relevant pertinent information is intentionally left off that because they're afraid it's going to get misinterpreted. And I mean, I think Floyd Toole's famous for saying there's more information on the side of a tire than there is in any spec sheet in terms of speakers. Yes. And how it's pretty interesting exactly how, because most of those numbers that they give you have no real world application.
Right. And if you give a lot of numbers, the reader will look at the chart that they understand.
Right.
Which is frequency, on-axis frequency response.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean anything.
And then they zoom way out so it looks flat. And so like
there's enough room in an ad to put that kind of stuff anyway. Ads are so expensive now. They don't really, unless it's a full page, they don't have space.
But what if the advertiser, and this, I'll give you a really clear example. What if your competition, to play into what you were talking about, what if your competition is throwing bogus numbers out there? And I'll just throw a couple of examples out there right now, and I'll name names. For example, like Samsung was putting out, anybody from Samsung? Good.
Did their phones not catch fire?
No, almost as bad as that. They had like home theater box systems or something, or maybe it was a sound bar, I can't remember. You know, some little plastic $200-300 thing. And they were saying it had 1,000 watts of power. And, you know, so obviously, I'm not sure how they got it to do that. Maybe they hooked it up to like a, 40 amp.
They added a couple of extra zeros by accident.
I don't know, maybe that, I don't know. Or another great example, oh shoot, I can't remember who it was. Oh, I don't.
They're reaching the lowest common denominator.
But here's one, here's not. I reviewed a subwoofer a while back that was rated to either 12 or 14 hertz extension, which the subwoofer would have to be like this giant thing to do that. And this subwoofer was, a normal size subwoofer. And so clearly, there are people out there, there are manufacturers out there that are not quite as scrupulous as others. And what do they do then? If they've created the expectation, and if you go on some of the home theater forums, you'll see guys think that a subwoofer has to go down to, they'll say, oh, this subwoofer goes to 14 hertz, so it is better than the subwoofer that only goes to 20, even though no measurement technique is specified. No, they don't say if it's -10, if it's -3, if it's whatever. So what is a manufacturer supposed to do in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I agree. It killed me when I see this. I see it, what killed me almost as much as seeing things on the high frequency spectrum. People throw on this crazy high spectrum stuff out there, and I know this gets into a whole can of worms in other directions. Like what? Well, okay. When you're talking about everyone's got these crazy high numbers for their sample rates, but as a studio guy, I know not a single mic in my studio goes above 20K. Not a single mic. So even if you're recording at these crazy high sample rates, that's awesome. Which I mean, it's air and all that kind of stuff. And we can go to that's a different argument. But the fact that nothing is being recorded up there, like nothing.
I think people who read the high art kind of magazines they don't care that much about specs overall because they know what it sounds like is not necessarily related to the spec. It could have super low harmonic distortion, but an amplifier that might have a little more distortion might even sound better. It's very subjective.
Yeah.
So Chris, you deal with this because you deal with desktop audio all the time, and you, correct me if I'm wrong, you encounter a lot of, little boxes. I mean, Michael gets the box that's that big and weighs 200 pounds.
Yes, fun to unpack
you
by
get the
yourself.
box that's that big and weighs, 2 pounds.
Lucky.
and may have an overly optimistic power rating. I've measured some of them. I know some of them are really, oh God, some of them are, I can tell stories if you're into speaker measurement and amp measurement, but you're not. So tell me, what have you found? You don't have to name names, but.
No, so it's interesting because I will write a review of a product that say has a watt rating, and I won't even mention it because I don't care. Because I don't think the readers should care about that. Because if the first watt really matters, the rest of them may not. That type of thing, and 1,000 watts of that Samsung may not be half as good as half a watt of VTL or something, you know. So I purposely don't talk about it because it doesn't matter. But
Ohm's law is confusing if you're not used to it. It can like the wattage argument gets people really confused a lot. And I deal with a lot of live sound engineers and stuff who really don't know what they're doing a lot of times, and my students too. And I'm admittedly, for many years when I was a young engineer, I was just chaining stuff together, plugging anything willy-nilly. And, you know, things blow up every once in a while, but that's part of live sound.
Yeah, so, and another thing that is really similar, is close to this too, is does it support DSD 4,029,000, right? I mean, everybody wants the highest thing, and manufacturers are like, well, we don't want to support it, but we feel like we have to put it on the spec sheet because otherwise it's not going to sell. And this is a good product, it should sell, you know? So it's kind of that conundrum. So I try not to really talk about that too much. Because I feel it doesn't matter.
Except to educate the readers and tell them that they don't really need to worry about
exactly.
this.
I feel my job is to educate people, and if I educate them, then they come back. So it's this long-term thing. Yeah. And so if I'm pushing, this does DSD 512, it's the greatest thing ever, or what, it's misinformation. So I try not to talk about it. And sometimes I'll have a little, here's what file formats it supports, because that can actually matter.
Yeah.
You know, if I have a library of FLAC that's uncompressed FLAC, and it doesn't work with a musical fidelity product, this actually happened to me, that helps people, and they're not going to read that anywhere else. But the specs for sample rate support, it's uninteresting to me too.
So nobody considers that, because a lot
of people consider
how many
that.
people here consider, if you're going to buy a DAC, and I know I keep picking on DACs, but if you were going to buy a DAC, would you want to look at what level of DSD it supports?
I think we scared people from raising their hand.
It's okay, I'll raise my hand.
Can I say something here?
What's that?
I went to the DSD seminar earlier, and the small size of music, who cares?
Okay.
I mean, there's literally nothing out there at those resolutions.
But I've heard in that very lobby last year, I heard two guys sitting there arguing about whether 2x DSD was enough to get in the DAC, or you needed to step up to
I've
quad.
heard the same thing in Phoenix, where a guy was a manufacturer showing at a high-end store, and they're mad because of MQA stuff, because they couldn't even get information to sign the non-disclosure agreement. So I know there's stuff out there, but is it actually important, or is it just somebody's trumped up something in marketing? Two different things, really.
Yeah, but the point is, you know, the advertiser has to. If the advertiser, the thing is, they don't. I can promise you, 9 out of 10 of these manufacturers don't care about what level of DSD support they have, but they will care if you have the expectation of a certain level of. And I have one of my clients ask me that because he had only 1x DSD, and he said, and he already finished the design of his product. He couldn't go up to 2x. And he said, do you think this is important? I said, absolutely not. But
isn't that the problem?
Somebody might.
It's a moving target. You can't
Yeah.
design anything because by the time you design it, it's obsolete in the minds of people who need all this
Yes.
and more that they're never going to use. And
Yes.
but that's what your job is, to tell them, stop it.
Exactly, and so the new one with that is MQA. I've taken so many phone calls about, okay, what do you think? You've heard it, and should we support it? And I tell them, you're the business owner, you need to sell products, and if that means you support it, whether you like it or not, that's your business decision. You know, I mean, what I've heard sounds terrific,
Yeah.
but if for whatever reason you don't think you want to put the work in or license it or whatever, that's a business decision.
That's right. You can't tell.
Plus, there's no music in it.
Yeah,
There is.
No,
There's some.
200,
Yeah.
200
no,
discounts.
there'll be a lot from Warner.
Yeah. Well,
Warner's already never said anything that they're gonna support digital stuff in like their financial statements.
Yeah, so
They can't figure out how
Joe's
to-
six-pack financial statement reader probably doesn't care about MQA. So, but when they signed a licensing agreement with MQA and they've digitized all the content, it's just a matter of
But
release timing.
Wouldn't you like to know that they haven't figured out a way to get their content digitized and out into the world? They put it in their financial statements, they go to the SEC.
So, on the hierarchy of things I would like to know, me personally, I probably don't care about that. But
The reason I do is because the music's not there.
It's gonna be. I don't think they signed a licensing deal for their music because it's just a hype. They're gonna release the music MQA encoded. They're gonna do it.
so they converted most of the Warner library already, if not all, already converted.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of release timing. But I mean,
And
that's
it's
a
gonna be-
discussion
it's gonna be
probably for
untitled. It's gonna
the
be
8th
untitled.
floor for
It's
Bob.
gonna be untitled, and it's gonna be. This is gonna happen.
Yeah, but it's a big thing in terms of specs and do we support it? Do we not support it? It's going to be in every single ad for somebody who's got it. You
Yeah,
know,
that's right.
MQA in big bold letters.
And you don't.
Yeah.
I have it, and you don't.
Yes, yes. Kind of like DSD was a year ago.
Let me ask you guys, is there something that really bugs you? Let's start with Jeff. Is there something that really particularly bugs you in the advertising that's in, high-end audio magazines? Because there aren't really any audio magazines, just high-end.
In Germany, there were lots of them. Here, not so much,
Yeah, not
which
so
is
much.
sad. But
Or on websites. Is there anything that particularly bothers you?
No, I mean, I guess I would say it wouldn't say directly in advertising, but I mean, to me, Audiophile is just finding the weak link in your chain. You're always upgrading, throughout that chain. But I feel like there's a lot of times chasing the wrong rabbit. That we're upgrading the wrong thing. We're going after whatever cables that go 99.9 times 10 to the 99th speed of light type of thing. And you're like, but is that really the bottleneck in your system? So I feel like that we're looking at we're looking at the wrong, I think the chasing the wrong rabbit's the right thing. That basically we're looking away. Hi-fi fidelity to me is accurate representation of the original sound. So lack of distortion, yada yada yada. But I feel like a lot of times there's this push, and again, it's business, and so it's marketing and everything behind it. But I feel like a lot of times that there's these other glaring holes in our systems that we just kind of gloss over as just being part of it, whether it be having to do with some of the vinyl stuff or I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love vinyl, but
accuracy is the most overrated thing in this entire business. Accuracy.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as accuracy. I mean, if something is completely distorted, yeah, we don't want that.
Right.
But at a certain point, you master a recording to sound a certain way. I don't care what you like.
Right.
I care what I like. So I'm going to
Absolutely.
make it sound the way I want it to sound.
Absolutely, absolutely. But to me, fidelity is truth. I guess no. I'd say I'm an accuracy guy. So, because I build monitors, and so I want to hear the music, not the speaker. And so that's
Sure.
So that's kind of my perspective on it. So I guess, but to kind of go back to that, what I believe and the general vibe I get is that we're oftentimes we're going after the nooks and crannies when there's these other larger issues.
And the
that
advertisers are making it look like
correct.
those things are far more important.
Because it's
than-
what they make, so
Right,
they're going to do
yeah,
that.
absolutely. And so
They make cables, they're not going to say, don't buy my cables, buy
absolutely.
new amplifier. Right.
So I'm saying
Right.
I'm saying it's business.
So-
So that's their job to sell those things. And so
Right.
I'm absolutely, I have no problems with that.
So the most annoying thing to me is when reviewers write a review and put a catchphrase in the review specifically designed to attract the advertiser so that their name can be in lights. And you've seen those. You've seen those. I will say, God's honest truth, I've never done that in my life. I've never sat there and said, what phrase, what can I put in that when the guy reads my copy, he's going to go, that's it. Never done it.
You've had him ask for it, though.
What's
Oh,
that?
yes, you've had him ask for it.
No, I swear to
Oh,
God, never.
I did.
Never.
There's nothing I can quote in that review.
And that's the way it goes. Make something up.
Yes.
No, seriously, that really bothers me. And sometimes you can read a review and you see it and you know where I see, especially if you're a writer, you go, okay, there it is, he wrote that. And some of these glaring, ridiculous statements, like whenever someone says, this is the best there is, that drives me crazy. Have you heard every
I've never
single-
thought of this
have you-
before. It's
so
so
I
true.
read on Facebook, so I'm not going to mention that guy's name, this is the best phono preamplifier ever made. Has he heard every phono preamplifier ever made? No. So it's just stupid crap. I hate that. That's what I hate.
So the quotes in there, the quotes overall, because I see you quoted.
I get quoted, but just they pull something out that I didn't say I'm going to put that in there, so it gets quoted.
Yeah. Now, I will say, when I was editor of Home Theater, I did have a writer in my employ whom I fired with extreme prejudice for a variety of offenses. But I found out he was doing that. He was trying to get manufacturers to quote. He's trying to give them a quotable phrase they
Right.
would put in and then they would buy him more dinners.
Right.
which is never a problem.
One
But-
dinner was okay, but more dinners gets. I was once, a manufacturer came over to visit me to install some equipment. We went out for dinner, and I brought the bottle of wine, which was never happens. I brought a good bottle of wine to a BYO place, and we had a whole dinner. And when the dinner was over, a guy at the next table came over and said, I know who both of you are, and I read Stereophile, and I'm shocked because there was not one nothing under. He was amazed. And the truth of the matter is, most of us are, it's not like we really haven't, there's another thing going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. There really isn't such a thing. There are little things, but nothing. It's not like an alternative world that exists, that we all are in, and now you're seeing this world above board that's, looking a certain way. There isn't such a thing.
So, Chris, what bugs you about the ads that you see?
Okay, so actually, I can't think of anything that bugs me, but I look at it as like we're all adults. We've all seen advertising all our lives, and we probably believed very little of it, right? We can all see through it. It's in our face constantly. So I guess maybe my standard is so low. I just look at it as like, BS, whatever.
Our ads are better than the drug ads on television. The irritable bowel syndrome, the woman, that flesh.
So
don't you want to kill the people that made that ad?
I can't.
Our ads are well much better than that.
I wouldn't want to take credit for that ad.
I know.
As an ad
Are
writer.
you ready for Harmonia?
I mean, so I have some things that bug me.
Oh wait, I got one thing.
Oh, what do you got?
I got one thing, including a very good-looking person in your ad
You don't like that?
to sell
Yeah.
like a cable or something.
Okay.
There's a couple of them, or maybe one in the guide, and I just look at it. It just bugs me. I mean, there's this beautiful woman, and then there's this ugly speaker. I don't know.
That's true. I beg that position.
Yeah.
Good looking speaker and good looking.
Not my thing. It bugs me.
So I have something that bugs me, and it's the use of nonsense phrases in advertising, and I've done this myself many times. But clients expect it, and you give the client what you hope to. When you write ads, you're going to give the client what they want, and there's a classic ploy, if you want to call it that. When you write ads, you write a really good one, and you're like, yeah, this is a good ad. Client will buy it. It gets all the products. It's interesting. It's funny. Whatever. And then you write a really crappy one, and then you write one that's really, really edgy. So they won't buy the really, really edgy one because they don't have the best.
Do you always give them like a choice of three?
Always three. And then you hope they won't buy the really crappy one, and you hope they'll buy the one that's pretty good. So yeah, I mean, I put the phrases in there, and some of my clients are very sensitive to phrases that will turn audiophiles off because there are a lot of them. But what really bothers me is these meaningless phrases. There was a great one, and it was in a quote. And I know I'm just going to turn on the Michael Fremer switch here, but
Good for you.
it was because I'm going to mention several things that he doesn't like much. I remember there was a quote that Bose, switch number one, used to run all the time about one of their plastic thingamajigs that had some drivers in it and stuff, some kind of a thing, and it said, and the quote was from switch number 2, Julian Hirsch, formerly of switch number 3 Stereo Review, and the quote was, possibly the best reproduced music people have ever heard. Some people have ever heard. Is that right? Possibly the best reproduced sound many people have ever heard.
True.
Which has to be
Weasel
one of the
words.
most meaningless phrases I've ever seen in my life, and I couldn't believe Bose kept running that quote for a couple of years.
It's the best they could do.
It means, possibly Michael Fremer will be the next president of the United States. It's possible.
Given what's the choice right now, it could happen. You'd be better off.
You're an American citizen,
Yes, I
right?
am.
Okay,
No, I was born in Kenya.
There you
I'm a
go.
Muslim.
Yeah.
Can I tell a quick joke? Quick joke.
And
Quick joke.
Sure.
So Amar Bose meets Paul Klipsch on the street, and Paul Klipsch goes, "Hey Amar, how you doing?" And Amar goes, "Great, Paul. How are you?" Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, that's fine. But another thing that you see you can pick up any issue of any audio magazine, and you'll see like words like musical What is it means absolutely nothing.
Or depth or spaciousness or.
Oh, yeah, all that sort of transparent. Or
That means something.
My favorite is
Wait.
what?
Transparency means something. Depth means something.
It means something, but when you say your amplifier has, or you name your product, you can apply that to the $15 LaPi amplifier that you buy in Parts Express.
You could say
And
it, but
you
it
can
doesn't mean
say
it's
it.
true.
Right, but that's the thing. It seems to me like ads, and I'll give an example here. I actually brought one with me. Should be a little less of that sort of meaningless nonsense. Here's a great one. You'll like this. I hate the phrase analog-like, because you know what analog-like means? Digital. Otherwise, it would just be analog.
That's right. Yeah, that's one of the worst things. Don't make an excuse for what you got. It's,
And you know, you could say the very first prototype CD player from 1970 something or whatever was analog-like.
No, but it wasn't.
In some ways, it was. You know,
It was horrible.
sound
And it's
came
also
out.
just implying that analog is better. And in good, there's bad analog too. I'm saying there's good.
There's
There's
bad
good
of
analog.
both.
Yeah, so just by sheer association of analog isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, I think there's a little piece of education that we could offer here too, is that so many of the hi-fi companies are tiny. They're probably writing their own ads, and it's an engineer writing the ad, and they're doing the best they can. So
It's the same with the instruction manuals. The engineers write the
completely.
instruction manual, and they're horrible. You cannot make sense of it.
yeah, when I
And
got
the
into
smarter they are, the worse.
Yeah, I got into the industry in 2007, and I had this grandiose idea that there's all these big companies, and they were making all kinds of money because their products are expensive, and way different.
Yeah.
And you know, I can also tell you that even the ones that are wise enough to hire a professional ad writer, there are a few cases where that professional ad writer has actually even ever heard, or in many cases even seen the product.
Who knows nothing about high-end audio or the
And
customer that they're trying to reach.
That's not to pick on audio. That's all. I used to write ads for Hawker Beechcraft, and I never flew in one of their planes. I wrote mini ads for them before I ever even got in one of their planes. But that's what advertising writers do. You know, and you know, hopefully the advertising manager or whoever, marketing manager from the manufacturer will guide them and make sure the ad is pretty effective or accurate or whatever. But yeah, I mean, when you write ads, you're conveying some information, but you're also spinning a giant web of BS sometimes.
Excuse me, there seems to be an assumption here that ads are like interpreted through the rational.
Oh no.
And
Right.
as someone, I'm on the other side, actually evaluating and assess ads from major manufacturers, and it's all about emotion. So it's not about like, here's the spec, et cetera. It's
Right.
like, Mike Fremer said this was actually a very good thing, and I can feel good about what I bought because Mike Fremer said such
Yeah.
and such and such.
And that's so true.
And that's because we want to feel like we're a smart buyer.
Yeah.
And maybe this group is like the niche within the niche within the niche.
Yep.
Who's actually looking at specs. But with all due respect, Bose can probably buy most of the companies in here.
But not because they make great sounding products, but because they're a good business.
And
Right.
because
Better, Bose is probably advertising budget is bigger than high-end audio.
Probably true.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
very sad, too.
And but maybe there's not a quid pro quo, mind you, in terms of I advertise and this is reviewed, but there's a lot of companies that will never get a review in some of the major magazines, yet when Technique came in with the direct drive, I mean, just everyone featured on the cover, et cetera. Why? Because people know techniques. And even though it's not, and I've got.
And it was a significant product in terms of its design, and it's an iconic product in terms of the old 1200. And there are a lot of reasons why that product was.
I'm not, but it's much more likely to be on the cover than, let's say, the Kuzma you reviewed this issue.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a speaker company that I haven't looked lately, but they used to have ads a few years ago. Tons of specs in the ad, and I always looked at it with just headache inducing. I was like, this is never gonna make me want to buy that
Yeah,
product,
cool.
right? So yeah, it's totally an emotional thing. Appeal to emotion.
So compare cars ads, which just have like, here's the seashore, whatever, et cetera, versus the others, which here's like, whatever in terms of all the different capacitance and so on of cables. Which is more effective?
Has Bose ever published any of their specs?
No,
No.
You may get sued if you try too.
they might publish like battery life on their Bluetooth speaker or something, but no, they don't. I've measured a huge number of their products, and some of them are actually pretty good. But I mean, the speakers, that's the thing, is you're in the audio industry, in the high-end audio, you tend to think of Bose speakers, which to Bose is the trivial little tiny
Right.
business at this point. But it's interesting, because I remember a friend of mine did a cost rundown, who works for another company, did a cost rundown on the Bose Wave Radio back in 1999. And something like, I think,
$12.
the thing, I think he said it would have cost him 40, it was sold for, $250 or $300. And I think he said it would have cost him $47 to produce, which of
That's
course
a
it would have
lot.
cost, Bose less.
Yeah.
But he said there was like $105 of advertising in every one of those products.
Yeah. They're an advertising and marketing company that has
Yeah.
chosen audio to make their money, is what I see them as.
Yeah, they really are.
From the beginning, from the time Amor Bose made his 901 speaker, I was in Boston at the time, and the ad was, I'm Amor Bose, I'm an engineer, and I measured the direct reflected sound in Boston Symphony Hall, and it was 8-to-1. So I made a speaker that bounces 8 speakers off the wall and 1 towards you. What does that have to do with anything in the world?
Well, I wish he were here for you to argue with him. But I in defense of Bose,
Can you do that?
What?
Defend Bose?
I can easily defend
Okay,
Bose.
then have it.
Because the Bose products I test, you've never seen or heard before, except on airplanes. But
I did the Acoustimass speaker, I heard that.
no, that's crap. But wait, is there anybody from Bose here?
Too bad, I would wish they were.
But no, their little Bluetooth speaker that's that big is really good. It actually, I measured it.
Compared to the Riva, have you heard the Riva?
I have heard the Riva. Oh yeah, it's actually better than the small Riva. It's not as good as the big Riva, obviously. But and their wireless or their noise canceling headphones do cancel noise better than anything else, and they sound okay, and they're comfortable, which is more than you can say about a lot of headphones.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
how many
gotta be-
headphones do you want to get on and fly to Japan with right now?
That's gonna be half their business these days, isn't it? The noise canceling headphones.
It's a lot, I'm
It's a
sure.
lot.
Yeah.
That, Bluetooth speakers.
I think we're drifting a little bit.
We are. So I think at this point we can probably, I kind of covered all the topics that I have here. Oh, you know what? I have a couple more phrases that I can't stand, and they're ones that are pseudo-meaningful. They sound like they're technically solid, but they're really not. And it's another thing that's sort of thrown out there to deal with people's expectations when they don't really know what the phrases mean. One of them is high current amplifier. We see that all the time. It doesn't mean, what does that mean, a high current amplifier? I don't know. I measure amplifiers. I have no idea what a high current amplifier means. Now, if you have, 2 amplifiers and they're both driven within their means into the same speaker at the same level, they're putting out the same amount of current. It's just a mathematical calculation. I mean, I have a manufacturer who has or I have a client who's got a pretty, it's not a client who you would ever have even heard of. They make, in-wall speakers and stuff. But they have like a really crappy amp, and they call it a high current amp because it's Class AB, therefore high current.
Just a
or
catchphrase
something.
that they're just
It's just
using.
a catchphrase.
Yeah,
It sounds like it means something. And another one is low feedback. Well,
But that,
what does low mean? I don't
we had,
know.
there were some high feedback
Yeah.
amplifiers
Yeah.
and some low feedback amplifiers.
And
Where do you draw the line between high and low?
Where do you draw the line? And is the consumer, I don't even know, I can figure it out, but
Don't you think most of these phrases, people are numb to them, or they don't even pay attention to them anymore because they're so
I
meaningless?
gotta tell you, I've reviewed electronics, which I generally don't do anymore, but I've reviewed electronics and had people say, well, what about the current? I'm like, you can just calculate it. You can look at my measurement of the amp's output, and you can just calculate. And I showed them how to do that, and they're like, oh, wow, but current is.
Because they're trying to grasp at straws to know something.
Yeah.
That will give them an indication whether it's something they should grab onto and buy because it has something, but they don't know
Yeah,
what that something
but
is.
that makes you susceptible to advertising.
That's right.
And one thing I wanted to say is knowledge is power, and the more you know about this stuff, the less susceptible you are to advertising. And if you read books like the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook, which is not going to be the most fascinating read of your life, but you will learn a lot, or High Power Audio Amplifier Cookbook is another really, really good one. There's a few others out there. The Floyd Tools book is great. I mean, again,
Most consumers don't really get into the weeds like that.
but most of them
Because
don't. But the
they're
thing is, you can become or just most of the different publications will occasionally publish a really good technical article that explains something. And, I mean, especially, Stereophile's always, and I've learned a lot from Stereophile
Yeah.
articles.
Me too.
Kyle Hertzens does an
Yeah.
amazing job.
Yeah.
And on inner fidelity.
And we publish measurements, which some magazines don't,
Yeah.
but it's amazing how many readers abuse the measurements. They
Yeah.
don't, there's like a whole set of measurements of all different things you can look at, and they look at the on-axis response, and if it's not perfectly flat, then they're upset. And I remember one review of a speaker, and John said, if you're right on axis, which you're not supposed to be sitting, there's gonna be a dip right in the lower mid-range, but if you sit where you're supposed to be sitting, it fills in. But they don't get to that point because they just look at that one measurement and they don't understand all the rest of the measurements. So it's a double-edged sword publishing measurements.
For me, I think one of the things I think is the most difficult to convey is just what a decibel is. I see misrepresentation of decibels quite a bit too. Whether you're talking about acoustic decibels, electrical decibels, or everything in between, whether you're talking about dBu, dBm, dBV, dBSPL, dB, all these different decibels, and it is confusing. Again, decibels are funky. I mean, I spent a third of my semester on teaching recording arts students, and I admittedly I was a master engineer for many years, and in recording arts and pro audio, we throw those numbers around all the time. Decibels here, decibels there, but nobody really knows what those decibels really mean and what's behind those numbers.
And most of them are going to get to the point of getting behind those numbers. They don't have time to learn
right,
stuff.
but just the simple fact, like what those numbers mean on your fader, or even on the dial, or what that is. What does a decibel mean? And yet they're thrown all over in spec sheets and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I see them used wrong a lot of times, because sometimes on the bigger companies, sometimes, or we'll say medium-sized companies, where the engineers will write the specs, but then the marketing company doesn't, or the marketing department or company doesn't understand what those numbers are, and they use them wrong, and you're like, that's complete nonsense. But to the consumer who doesn't really understand it, they're like, oh, cool. Is more better or is less better? That's all I want to know. So
Michael, you wanted to add a little bit about how to read between the lines in product reviews. Do you have anything to say about that?
Absolutely nothing. No, you know, there's sometimes like, I'll write a review, and I'm just writing what I think, and someone will email and say, I know what you really meant. I could read between, I knew, but I didn't mean anything other than what I wrote. And you know, if any reviewers do try to write something that they don't mean, and they mean something between the lines, you know, I don't know. But I don't. I write what I mean. That's the only way I can do it. But what bothers me sometimes is when you'll see something, the new American icon, the best is the superlative-driven part of this. That really bothers me.
what is like the coldest beer in town? I mean, I see that like,
Yeah.
really?
Right. But that's a beer you buy for $1. We're talking about expensive
It's
Yeah.
not
stuff.
even desirable. I mean,
Yeah. Right, exactly.
And
I
those
think
are the things you
that's
see on the covers of magazines. You know, see the new American icon, or the that kind of stuff. It just bothers
Excuse
me.
me, I have a question. When do you feel like sometimes you name names and other times say, you know what, I'm not gonna, like, it's some other leading manufacturer, something like that, and you feel like you can't name a name, making a comparison?
In a review,
Yeah, well, in a review, where you brought up something where you had a problem with the ground hum, and you were talking about having purchased one that had an older AC cable, you didn't have and you didn't kind of name the name of the newer one that did create a problem.
yeah, but that was just an AC cable. That I didn't even and I wasn't even sure whether maybe the ground wire had broken inside. It was just one of those things.
So, yeah, so when do you name the name and say, like, this manufacturer put this in and it sucked, or not?
You know, that's the other thing that we could talk about is why is it that most reviews are positive? You know, oh, you only write positive. Most reviews are positive because we try to find products that we like to review. We don't, writing a negative review is really easy. It's the easiest thing. And so you only have so much space to give you a review, so we want to write positive reviews. But sometimes a product from a company that you know makes good products disappoints, and then you have to write a negative review, which I've done. But we don't go out looking for negative, unless it's a big company where everybody gives it a positive review, you don't like the thing, so then you want to get and say, listen. But usually most reviewers want to find things that they like and tell you about.
So do you, as reviewers, do you solicit or do you actively pursue certain products that you're
Yeah, I'll
interested
come
in?
to a show like this,
Yeah.
and I'll walk around and see something I like, or a CES, and I'll say, I'd like to review that, and if they want.
So if somebody solicits you or goes, I'd like
It's
to review
both,
this. Yeah.
usually though.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Or sometimes the editor will say, listen, I'd like you to I saw this, I just reviewed a big amplifier. from SAE, which was an old famous company in the 80s. And John Atkins said, this amplifier has some of the best, I want you to review it. And of course I did.
Isn't that a selection bias? And so you can deduce from the fact that product A, B, C is not getting reviewed, that you're not listening to it, or you're running into it in the show and going, eh.
Okay, I'm one guy that does reviews of my site, and so I only have a certain amount of time, and I try to pick out good things and, you know, do my readers a service. So if I don't review something, that means absolutely nothing about the product.
That's right. People say, oh, you didn't review it, so it must not be good. No, it's not. That's
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, I tend to review, I guess I'm less of a, you know, my portfolio of gigs is fairly broad, so I do 2 reviews a month, I guess. But, you know, I review things that I'm curious about. Like I just signed on to review this new Fluon speaker because I reviewed the very first one they did, this big tower speaker, and the crossover points in it were like random pick crossover. I mean, unbelievably bizarre, and just like nobody who knows what they're doing to do that. But yeah, it still sounded sort of okay for what it was, and it was $500 for a tower that was like that big. So. But anyway, but you know, they offered me to review their, and I put all that stuff in their review. I picked it all apart, and they offered me to review their new tower, and I pretty much begged Home Theater Review to let me do it because I'm like, I'm the guy to do it. You know, I'll figure out if they got it because I know they were. I know from you know, they were looking to do better. I heard the scuttlebutt was they were looking to. They recognized they had a problem and were looking to improve. So I thought I'm the perfect guy to do it because I'll take apart the crossovers, I'll run the measurements, I'll see if they figured out how to make a speaker or not. And I tend to. I mean, I had a Sunfire sub I reviewed. It was their new sub. It was bigger than their other ones, and I tested all of their other ones, and I really wanted to review it. And the PR people pitched me on it, and I agreed to review it, and it was pretty ferociously bad, and I wrote the review. But you know, and the thing is, I sometimes if you just like annoyed with the product, I think you guys probably you just get rid of it. You're like, I don't want to review this thing.
We don't. We have a policy that if the manufacturer submits a product to review and you get it in, you're gonna review it. You have to review
It does a service to the readers.
You have to
well,
review
you know,
it.
the thing is like if there's
no fun,
products.
is it?
Well, sometimes I get products where I'm like, you know, this company is not. I get probably a lot more of this than you guys because I do Bluetooth speakers and stuff like that, right? So I'll get products that really kind of don't work, and if it's some little manufacturer no one's ever heard of, I'd rather spend my time, because writing reviews is a little bit of a loss leader for me.
Yeah, that's a different.
I'd rather spend my time reviewing something more interesting than that. But, you know, so that's my personal take, but I have a little more luxury than most guys because reviewing is just, it's something I do. I mean, I make money at it, but I kind of do it for kicks. You know?
So I'd like to touch on his thing real quick about when do you name names and not name names. And when I don't name names, it's because if I did, it would be a disservice. People would take that and run with it. So really, it wouldn't be as good as you think it would be. And also, to touch on Michael's thing about a negative review, it's really weird. Very simple to write, and you get incredible credibility for writing them.
Right.
So people love it. So my complaint about you guys, this is terrible,
Right.
but if I write something bad, you'll be, oh, you're so honest.
Right. And you write
All
something-
my good ones are honest too, you know? So it's this weird.
Or they have a
thing.
number. You don't write enough negative reviews. Like what ratio would you
Yeah.
like a positive to
It's
negative reviews?
weird.
And the guy who starts reading you tomorrow, the day after you wrote the negative review, you know, and then sees you wrote a positive review, well, clearly he's on the manufacturer's page.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, there are people that always have
Weird.
ulterior motives for everything that we do, and nothing you can do about those people because they probably live their lives that way in other areas of their life too. So.
Yeah.
Actually, I was on the manufacturer's payroll for that sort of, because I write ads for core brands. One of the ceiling speaker and Sunfire is actually a division of Corvair.
You're being so honest.
And, but I wrote, because the thing is, I'm like, I don't care if they fire me, because I'm pissed off that they sent this thing to me.
Right.
Because they knew I was gonna measure it, and they should have measured it themselves.
Right.
But they just sent it to me, and actually the product manager came up to me at CEDIA and apologized.
Wow. I had the opposite. I reviewed a speaker from a well-known Audiophile, a well-known German company. I reviewed a bunch of their speakers, owned their speakers, great speakers. They sent me this $50,000 speaker to review, and it had this lumpy sound. And then you write the review in Stereophile before you see the measurements. I wrote lumpy sound. It 40 hertz, it rolled off below 40 hertz, and this is, $50,000 speaker. John came and measured it, and that's how it measured, just what I wrote it sounded like. And so they got the review, and they were all bent out of shape. You should have told us something's wrong. Well, both speakers measured the same. So we said, we're running the review, but if you want to send another pair that revised, we'll do it. So they sent it, and it was somewhat better, but it was the same thing. And they were really upset with me, and I always make it my policy is when I go to a show after I've written a negative review, I walk into the room where the people, I want to meet them and talk to them because I believe what I wrote. And I was in Germany, and I went into the room of Audiophysic, and I said, how's the show going for you? And the guy said, till you showed up, fine. But if you're afraid to walk into a room of a manufacturer who you gave a bad review to, then you shouldn't be reviewing equipment, because then you'll never write a bad review. And there are guys in this business that I'm friends with, and if I don't like the product, I'm going to give it a negative review. And there are guys that I find repellent, and they have a good product, it's going to get a good review. I cut off you have to, because our credibility is all we have.
Yeah, and when you find something wrong with it, a lot of times they go, you found it, didn't you? They're not going to tell you, but...
See, what I get was, and Steve Guttenberg complains to me about all the time about this, oh, no one ever found that before. All the time, which there's a good reason for that, because we get the first one off the line or the second one off the line. So I'm being signaled that we have to wrap it up. Is that correct? So
Okay.
thanks everybody for coming, and I'd like to thank Chris, Michael, and Jeff, and I guess we'll probably be kicking around for a minute or two after.
No, we got-
Want to chat about anything we chatted about or anything we didn't chat about?
We got to take a selfie, Michael.
Yeah.
This is a classic moment. If you know our history.
Do you have a history?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
What?
Long story.
It's a long story. There's another panel that we did.
Actually, you and I only have recent history.
That's right. Well, we can go back a long.
I know, but we only have one fight.
That's right, online. Ours was in person.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is awesome.
It's good. Glass
Did you
notes.
have a fist fight?
Almost. No.
Virtual fist.
Yeah, virtual. No.
I know two reviewers.
It's online. You can see. You can watch it.
So before Jeff got on the panel, it was just going to be me and Michael.
we have to be separated.
Yes.
I didn't realize
Thanks,
that.
guys.
It was great.